And we are live. Welcome, mystery and thriller fans. I'm your on-air host, Sara DiVello, and I am so excited to host Navy intelligence turned crime analyst for a detective unit in an undisclosed location in Washington State, turned detective novelist turned crime fiction writer, the one and only Spencer Kope, here to spill the tea, as the cool kids say, about his brand new book, Echoes of the Dead, about his man tracker for the FBI. I didn't even know there was a thing as such as a thing as a man tracker. I need the full skinny on that. Spencer, welcome to Mystery and Thriller Mavens. Tell us about this book.
Well, thank you for having me. Yeah, this is the fourth book in the Special Tracking Unit series. So it picks up with the team again, which is STAPS, the FBI tracker, who's got a special ability. And it's borderline paranormal, but it's based in synesthesia, which is a real condition where, like, if you hear a sound, you'll actually see it. I mean, where the senses are messed up, so they don't operate the way they normally would. So that's the real condition. I kind of take it a little further than that into the borderline paranormal. But he can see what's called shine, which is, people would like look at that as somebody's aura, and every shine is different. He's never come across a shine that's the same, and it's both the color and it comes with the texture. So the combination of the two for him are like fingerprints. And so he can walk onto a crime scene and he can look around and kind of see what happened. And in a lot of cases, figure out who the bad guy is from the shine, but that doesn't tell him who the shine belongs to. So the stories, for the series basically follow that path from knowing the shine, and then you got to figure out who it belongs to. So this one, it starts down in Bakersfield when four very powerful men go missing on their annual fishing trip. And this time they get a call from the FBI director wanting them down there to help out, even though at first it looks like maybe they just got lost. But one of them happens to be a congressman, and the Secret Service gets upset when they lose congressmen. And so they go down there and very quickly start to realize, yeah, this is not a case of missing people. And then it kind of takes a dive from there.
Ooh, well, we're here for it, Spencer Kope, and we're going to do the deep dive with you into all this goodness with you, the former Russian linguist, Navy intelligence officer turned crime analyst with a real life detective unit. So much to discuss. But first, I just want to welcome everyone who's watching with us on Facebook, watching on YouTube, watching on Murder by the Book, watching on my channels, watching in Mystery and Thriller Mavens, wherever you're watching from tonight. Welcome. If you've been here before, you know the drill. And if you're new, welcome. You're in the right place. Here's the drill. Every Monday for hashtag Mystery Monday, because Mondays can be murder, I give you my hand-picked featured authors, and you get to ask them anything. So ask Spencer about Echoes of the Dead. Ask him about synesthesia. Ask him about psychics. Ask him about malachite. We're going to come back to that. Ask him about the shine. We got a lot of questions going. Just get them right there in the comments, and I'll get them right over to him. Already kicking off. Debbie, welcome. She says, I can't wait to read the new book. Debbie, I think you're going to like it. Ron is saying, looking forward to the latest book and others to come. Ron, I think you're going to really enjoy it as well. Now, Spencer, and I also just want to welcome Dana, welcome Cynthia, welcome Chantel, welcome Beverly, welcome Bonnie, welcome everybody. So great to have you here. Ron, okay, any questions? Just get them going right in there. Okay, good. I got Ron's question. Okay, Spencer, so let's get into it. Do you believe in these supernatural powers, and do you have any?
Do I have any? No. I think that there's just too much in the universe to rule things out. And I guess my family has a bit of a history with premonitions, and I hear stories from like my grandmother about, her side would see angels, and so I guess early on you hear stuff like that, and it kind of fascinates you. And plus I had, my mom died just before my 5th birthday.
Oh,
And so when stuff like that happens, I think it makes you look at things differently and question things and wonder. And it's interesting because every once in a while, this has only happened a couple of times, but I'll have dreams that are very, very real. And one of them was early in my writing career when I was kind of stumbling and wondering if I should continue with this. And it was of my mom. And I walked at my grandma's and grandpa's place. I walked down the hall and there was this big ballroom, which wasn't there in real life, and a little girl dancing around. And so I started dancing with her, and she grew into my mom. And then she said, keep writing. It's what you're supposed to do. And bam, that's when I woke up, and it was just so real that it's like, oh, wow. Okay. Is that something I better pay attention to? Or, so I don't know, when it comes to stuff like that, I don't know what to believe, but I don't discount it either. So.
Ooh, I like it. I like it. And I agree with you. There's too much out there for us to say with certainty that anything doesn't exist, right? Like, we can't disprove it. So I'm open to it. George is saying he made it. George Beach, welcome. Great to have you, sir. Thank you. And he's saying good evening from a fellow former Navy crypto intel analyst here. George, I don't even know what that means, but it sounds super cool. We're so happy to have you here hosting your fellow Navy intel analyst. Is that your correct?
Well, I was a cryptologic technician interpretive, CTI, when I was in the Navy, but then I was intelligence operations specialist when I was with Naval Intelligence as a civilian. So,
ooh, interesting.
Lots of different titles.
Russian linguist. Yep. Tell us what that means.
I didn't know Russian until I went in the Navy, but I went to boot camp in '82, and right after that, they sent me to the Defense Language Institute in Monterey. And of course, the Cold War is going on. This is right around the time the Korean Airlines was shot down. And so that I spent a year there, and it was 7 hours a day in class. I mean, you might have 6 people to a class, and this, a former Soviet citizen, just hardcore, just teaching you. And sometimes to the point I've seen guys break down and cry because they couldn't get an accent right. And it was tough too, because imagine if you're learning English from one instructor from Texas and another from New York. That's the kind of stuff you run into if you got somebody from Kiev and Moscow. And so that was a year. And then after that, I went on to another, 5-6 months of a more advanced specialized language for the job. And so that, it was very trying, big sense of accomplishment when you finally get through all of that. And then, of course, you go on to other interesting things once it's all the training's done.
Wow. Well, I am fascinated. I'm just so fascinated. I think this is so cool. And thank you, sir, for your service.
Thank you.
George is saying he was in CTT. I don't even know what that means, but it sounds very cool. Do you know what that means, Spencer?
Yes. Yeah, they were the technicians, and you had CTRs, which were the ditty boppers. They did Morse code, and CTMs, which were the maintenance guys, took care of the equipment, specialized equipment that we would use, and CTAs were the admin types that would do a lot of the paperwork that came with what we did. So yeah, it was a whole specialized intel group that focused on a very special mission. So.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, for your service. We appreciate you keeping us safe. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Debbie is saying, I think I missed one. I'm sorry about that. Cynthia is saying that she really likes the realistic presentation of dyskinesia. I can hardly believe that he's able to follow his senses and keep them hidden. Yes. So your guy, Steps, he got lost in a forest when he was 8 years old. He froze to death. They resuscitated him. And when he resuscitated, his brain had changed, and now he sees colors with everyone on them, and then anything that they touch. So staying in hotel rooms is a special kind of torture for poor steps. What gave you that idea to have this, and he calls it his shine, which is, I love that, because you can picture an 8-year-old boy trying to reckon with what's happened to him and why he's seeing all these colors and kind of being scared and terrified, and then grappling with it. And then he learns that if he wears lead glass, it prevents it. What gave you the idea to have the lead glass prevent it?
Well, I don't know. Things just come to me. It's like, okay, I figured I need to have some way of this not driving him completely insane.
Okay.
Because if you think about it, if you looked around, I mean, that's why he's such a book freak. He collects books and he loves books. Because if you think about it, you buy a new book, you open it up, nobody has touched the page. It's all machine made. Also, the reason he likes the sky and any water, because there's no shine. But for his job, just to function as a human being, he needed to have something that would block that. And so that's where I was thinking, well, lead, nuclear, it's a good shield for that. So why not go with that? And I thought I needed something that could be hidden. And wearing a pair of glasses, it just made sense to have lead crystal, because that way it just look normal and it would do the job. So.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Cynthia is saying she thinks there is too much in the universe to say that this is not possible. Cynthia weighing in, I think both Spencer and I totally agree with you. Debbie saying she agrees as well. Spencer, now embedded as George, I'm sorry, is saying thank you for your service. Spencer, George, thank you for your service as well. Yeah. Debbie would like to know, did anything in particular happen that pointed you in the direction of dyskinesia? Great question, Debbie. Spencer, what gave you this idea?
Well, when I first started thinking about writing a crime novel, I'd been working at the sheriff's office for a while at that point. And I didn't know if I was going to be able to do it, because I tried writing a spy novel when I was working for naval intelligence, and it didn't click for me. It just didn't work. And so I had my doubts, and I decided early on, okay, if I'm going to do this, I'd written some other books prior to that. I figured that I need something that is different. I don't want just another alcoholic cop who's on the rebound and has to redeem himself, or, all the usual, the crime stuff. And so I thought, well, there's not really a lot that's been done with tracking. And then the more I thought about it, it's like, I can't do that, because like when our canines go out on a track, they're there for the track and they do the track. And then within a few hours, it's wrapped up and they're gone. And so you can't make a novel out of that. And that's when I started thinking, well, what about a human tracker? And not just a human tracker, but a unit specialized in tracking that followed up with the analysis and the police work and the interviews and, chasing the lie, trying to figure out, who did it. And so that's when I started going down that path. And I don't remember what it was that kind of flipped the switch and made me think, hey, what if he sees this weird aura that kind of tells him what's going on? And, but it worked, at least in my head, it worked. And then I had the really stupid idea of writing it in first person present, which allowed me to get into Step's head. So you have more of that direct, access to what he's feeling and the problems that he's personally dealing with. But writing first person present is really difficult, especially with a crime novel, because you're used to, you see a scene where, this guy's doing this thing and it kind of leads off to something over here where somebody else is doing something. And as the reader, you can kind of draw your own conclusions. You got your red herrings thrown in there. And I can't really do that with this series. So it's more of a challenge trying to figure out how I'm going to, craft the story. And I do stick things in every once in a while that are not from that perspective, which is kind of breaking the standard rules, but I keep it limited so that I'm not overdoing it.
Ooh, interesting. Thank you for the inside scoop, Spencer. Debbie is adding the leaded glass is such a neat aspect. I love that detail too, Debbie, and how he's a little boy and he goes to a glass blowing tour with his dad, and then he just happens to be looking through the tray, and then he's like, oh my god, I don't I'm relieved of seeing the shine that's been haunting this poor kid for 2 years, and that's how he figures it out. I love that. And I loved the idea that I like how he perceives, different colors of, oh, that's like pewter. Oh, that's like malachite, excuse me. These elemental, things that we can immediately say, oh yeah, I've seen pewter, I've seen malachite, I know that shade of green, or his fiance is Windex.
Yeah.
Windex blue. I loved that. So Spencer, as someone who is a real life crime analyst currently embedded with a detectives unit in an undisclosed location in Washington State, what kind of crazy stuff have you seen on the job that has inspired you to write this kind of crazy stuff on the page?
Well, a lot. I mean, as a crime analyst, I read a lot of the reports. I get to play in areas that normally, a lot of people don't get to access, like cold cases and stuff like that. And so, there's just a lot of, really bizarre things that happen that, the general public just never hears about. And I try to include things in the story that, without, linking it closely to the actual case. I just borrow from it. And really the books are just filled with actual things that have happened. I mean, guys, I think in the first book, there's one scene with the, where I called it the underwear that crawled, some meth head peeling off his clothes, and they found him by, following the trail of shed clothes. But we've actually had cases like that, where you're walking up the street and you're just following the clothes of this, he's having a psychotic moment or something. And then other cases, the craziest things you can imagine. And also stuff that really tries you. I mean, there is a recurring character in the story, Leonardo, a serial killer. He's the one that got away. He's the one that Jimmy and Steps have not been able to figure out, who it is. And it's really close and personal to Steps in particular, because he knew one of the victims. But they've been trying to figure out who this guy is forever. And that's actually based on a cold case that I had worked on for years and years. And it was kind of born out of the frustration of, we had DNA. All we needed to do was figure out, who it matched. And so we were doing DNA sweeps with all of our primary suspects. We were doing all kinds of stuff, trying to figure out, who this guy was. We knew it was somebody that was probably close. And so that character actually came from that case, just the frustration of not being able to figure out who he was. And for the record, we eventually did. In fact, when I wrote Collecting the Dead, it wasn't too long, within a year, I think, after that we actually got a tip that led us to our suspect, and he's in prison now. So yeah, there's stuff like that in there, and I'll make references. Off the wall references, like there's a reference to Elder Futhark, which is the Norse language of the Vikings from the 2nd century to the 8th century, I think it is. But it's big with the white supremacists, the neo-Nazis. They do tattoos with that. And so I had a white supremacist in the first book, and he was all tatted up with Elder Futhark. And that's something I just, I learned on the job and learned how to read it, because I kept seeing these ruins, and they'd even use it in letters from the jail. You'd see Elder Futhark show up. So, yeah. So, yeah, there's all kinds of stuff in there that if it looks really weird, it might be related to a real case. So.
Wow, we will keep our eyes peeled for that. Thank you, Spencer. Debbie is saying she really likes how Steps can tell if someone is still alive by their shine. Ooh, Debbie, good insight there. Yeah. So for those who haven't read the books in the Steps series, Spencer, tell us about that.
Yeah, it's something that I added because I wanted a ticking clock. to build that drama. And what better way to do that than rather than wondering if your victim is still alive or if they're already dead, you've got the shine. It kind of pulses when they're alive, and then it just kind of flattens out and is still when they're dead. And so when he sees shine related to the victim, Steps can tell if they're still alive or if they've already expired. And that just kind of, I mean, not that he isn't really hard driven to figure it out in the first place, but sometimes it just becomes obsessive for him. He just has to find them, before that shine just goes flat.
And what gave you that idea? I mean, I also love that, Debbie, and how he says it pulses with life as an actual living thing, as something from this, and that it has to be made contact with, like a footprint. It has to have some level of not just touching, but pressure. Pressure. Thank you. Yeah, really cool detail.
Yeah, and I guess part of that is looking at the shine is maybe related to the soul. And so that it leaves that residue wherever it goes. And while the soul is still in the body, it's like it's vibrant like the soul. But once the soul leaves, and there's, I can't remember which book it is, but I actually have a scene where Steps, he's seen this on rare occasions where he sees the shine, rising up from somebody who's died. But again, it's only a couple of times. Again, that's one of those little paranormal things that I kind of stick in there to, I don't know, kind of.
Well, I could talk about paranormal stuff all day, but y'all, this is your turn to talk to our featured author. So what do you want to know about Spencer? What do you want to know about Echoes of the Dead or Spencer's writing? Anything you'd like to ask the incredible Spencer Kope tonight? Get those questions going. I'll give you a moment because I know it always takes me time as well. So Spencer, the Associated Press raved that this book is suspenseful, unfolds at a rapid pace. It really does. And one of the things I noticed is that you have deliciously short chapters, which tricks me into thinking, oh, I can fit one more in before I go to bed. And next thing you know, it's 3 a.m. And I've read another 80 pages, but then I keep thinking just one more because they're nice and short. How do you execute that besides these deliciously short? Someone's laughing at me on Facebook, right? We can relate to that. Am I right, fam? So Spencer, besides short, deliciously tasty chapters, how, from a craft perspective, you're 4 books in, how are you doing that? Tell me.
Well, I lay out the whole story before I actually start writing it. And I learned that lesson the hard way. The first book I wrote, which has never been published, and this was 30 some years ago, I decided, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to write this book. And I started at the beginning and didn't plan the whole thing out. I knew where it was going, but I hadn't laid the whole thing out. And you want to talk about writer's block. Because if you don't have other places you can go to, if you get stuck right here, you're there until you figure it out. And so it took me 2 years to get that thing written. And the one I wrote after that took me 4 months to do the first draft, because I just decided I'm not doing that anymore. And I came up with what was my own way at that point. And I've modified it with, insight from others since then, but I just laid it out chapter by chapter, start with 1 sentence for each chapter and then just kind of fill it in. And that allows me, when I have a piece of dialogue that comes to me at 3 a.m. and I scratch it down, I have some place where I can put it, like I know that would be perfect in this chapter over here. And so I'll plug it in, and that way 3 months later, when I get to that chapter, I haven't forgotten it and it's right where it belongs. And so I do that. And then once I get the basic outline done, I try to expand it to a paragraph or 2 until I have a fairly good gist of the story and I've worked out some of the bugs. So.
Ooh, thank you for that inside scoop. I'm glad I'm not the only one who's waking up at 3 a.m. Lise is saying, I haven't read these books, but it sounds fascinating. I'm going to pick up the books. Lise, thank you so much. I think you'll really enjoy them. And I'm going to pop the link in the comments. You can grab your copy tonight and support a woman-owned independent bookstore. I'm talking about our favorite, Murder by the Book, y'all. So grab your copy tonight of not just this book, which comes out on October 5th. We're getting the inside scoop before this book has even hit the shelves, and it will ship to you the day it comes out. You can also get Spencer's backlist, his first 3 books in the Steps series. Ron is saying, I love that Steps has to fake knowing actual tracking techniques in order to explain how he does it. Ron, cool insight. Spencer, give us the scoop on that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a problem when you're supposed to be the world's greatest tracker and you can't really track that well. You're just following these, these signs that are invisible to everybody else. And so he's had to learn, some of the basics of human tracking just so he can point out things. And now, obviously, for him, it helps because he can already see where the heel of a foot landed. So he can look for a crushed leaf or, something like that he can point out. But when he's out there and he's working with these other agencies and he's leading the team, I mean, all eyes are on him. And, you have a lot of people in law enforcement that they may not be officially trackers, but they do know a few things about that. And so it's a challenge for him to maintain that, that cover. And especially when he knows, who did it. Once he matches up the shine to somebody, then they have to kind of find the real means of showing that this person did it, because you can't go into court and say that, I followed his aura and it was on the murder weapon, because they're going to lock you up. So that's always a challenge.
Yeah, it would be tough to go into court and say I followed his aura. I would not want to do that.
Yeah.
Cynthia is saying she loves the results of your challenge. Debbie is seconding that. Thank you, ladies, so much. Ooh, Debbie wants to know, did you talk to anyone who has dyskinesia to get some insight into how Steps would see things?
No, and you know what? If I could have found somebody, I mean, that would have been awesome. Just to, first of all, trying to understand how that would work for them. But for me, I just do a lot of research and a lot of reading and just kind of try to, figure things out that way. The fun part about being a writer, though, is when you do have the chance to go talk to people or visit locations. And I wrote a ghost story about Gettysburg years and years ago. And I actually got to go to a haunted house on the outskirts of Gettysburg that had been converted to a field hospital during the battle. And they had all kinds of really cool stories. So, I mean, it just adds to, when you get down to writing the story, having those experiences lets you put more into it to make it more, realistic. So anything like that, if I can do it, I do try to do that, but not in this case.
Thank you for the insight on that. And that sounds like an intense ghost story.
Yeah.
Ron is saying it took him some effort to get used to the first person perspective, but it really makes the story unique and pulled him in. Ron, I love first person because I want to get in that person's head. I want to get in their mind. I want to get in their point of view. It's a chance for me to walk in the shoes of these other people. I don't have synesthesia. I don't see colors. I'm okay with that, I think, although it would be cool. It might drive me crazy. So let us know in the comments. Would you want these powers? Yes or no? The other thing that I really enjoyed about this book, Spencer, is you're funny. I think you're funny. You have a wonderfully dry sense of humor where, and I knew I was going to like it from page 12, when he's talking about how Steps is saying he and his partner, Special Agent Jimmy Donovan, look for the lost, bring justice to the dead, and hunt some of the sickest minds our society has ever produced, which is no small task. Then he adds, the medical and dental plans are also excellent. He's so funny. It's that sense of humor that carried me, one of the many things that carried me through this book. Are you effortlessly funny, or are you cracking yourself up, or do you have to go back and insert that later? How's that work?
I think I give Steps credit for that because I don't know that I'm that funny, but it's interesting because that's one of the things that I get hit up on quite a bit. I have one reader who says she cracks up every time she thinks about one line about I blame it on the trees. That's like her favorite line from the latest book. And I don't know, these things just, they just come out and I put them down, and if they work, they work. And it's nice when you have a character who's supposed to be kind of snarky like that, and because you kind of let loose a little. And I think for me, I'm very much an introvert. I think a lot of writers are. And when I'm comfortable with people, like in my office, I'm by myself now, but I think they split us up because we got too noisy. But we had one of the detectives that I worked on cold cases with, and then one of the assistant crime analysts. We were all in there, and it was constant laughing out of that office because we were always cracking each other up. So I think there's a little bit of it that comes natural when I'm comfortable with the people I'm around or when I'm writing. Other than that, I don't know if I'm that funny, but as long as it's funny when it's written down, it's good.
Yay. Okay. Cynthia is saying that Steps' self-awareness keeps him fascinating. Ooh, Cynthia, that's a really good point. And I hadn't thought of it like that, but now that you're saying it, it's so true because he is very aware. I love how he's read all these books. And so he knows all this random knowledge and can help Jimmy with crossword puzzles or whatever. And that's fun. And he also is aware that people aren't always going to believe his talent, his gift, he feels sometimes it's a burden. So you're right. He is very self-aware, and that does keep it interesting. She's adding that the issue is what makes him so human and believable. Yes, I love that. You're totally right. That's such a great point. Thank you so much for chiming in with that. Melissa says, hi, Sarah. I'm late. Glad I'm here live. Melissa Watson, mystery and thriller Maven member. Thank you so much for joining us. Great to have you. You're not late. You're just on time. All right, you guys, we have time for 2 or 3 more questions for Spencer. So get them going in the comments. And Spencer, I'm just scrolling back, another question for you as well. One of your other reviews talked about, here it is, the relentless pacing and an impressively naughty plot. Let's talk about the pacing and the naughty plot. Would you describe it as naughty, and how'd you knock that up? So,
well, I mean, it's always a challenge trying to come up with something that people are not going to figure out right away. And so, I think that I don't know that it's necessarily naughty. But I do have a lot of little things going on and a lot of stuff that needs to be sorted out just to kind of keep things, moving along. And I think I write very tight, so that, I try not to waste a lot of words or have scenes that are just, a lot of waste. And so that's part of the pacing. It's just everything just boom, 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 boom. Leading to the next thing. And I think that lends to that impression of, boom, here's one thing, here's another thing. And then you got all this stuff going on. So that's pretty much the way they all are, I think. I'd like to say that I've kind of, from the, crime novel standpoint, I've kind of improved my technique as the series has progressed. And I probably write a little more tightly than I did at the beginning. I don't have, I haven't had in the first book, I had plain talk, which is a little thing that Jimmy and Steps would do when they're traveling, to a location. They have a G1 Gulfstream that flies them around the country. So one of the perks of the job. But that's a lot of air time, and so they kill some of that time, with plain talk, which is useless facts and stuff like that. So a lot of that stuff I haven't really included in some of the last books, but it's always there. Maybe I'll revive it and throw it in the next one.
I like that. George has a good question. He says, are we talking about dyskinesia or synesthesia? Good point. We're talking about synesthesia, right?
Synesthesia, yeah.
That's the thing with the colors, where people see colors.
Right. Yeah, and it's so bizarre. I mean, if you think about it, somebody playing a piano, and somebody with synesthesia would actually see, the different notes. I mean, not looking like a note, but they would see something that would represent that sound, whether it's a color, whether it's a shape. So it's just something crossed up in the way our senses process. But I mean, I've always been fascinated with that anyway, how the brain, I mean, really, you think about it, everything that we know, perceive, understand is just based on stuff that's coming into our brain. And if some of that gets crossed up, or hijacked, or who knows what. I mean, you could do all kinds of stuff. So,
just for clarity's sake, I'm going to go ahead and put the synesthesia, the definition of synesthesia from Healthline right in here, so we can all just get super clear on it. So synesthesia is a neurological condition in which information meant to stimulate one of your senses stimulates several of your senses. So people who have synesthesia are called synesthetes. They can often see music as colors, just as Spencer said, and taste textures like round or pointy when they eat food. Fascinating. I actually have two friends who have synesthesia, and
really?
They don't see music or taste pointy. I've never heard that, but they see letters and numbers as colors. So Sara might be like, a blue S, a green A, a yellow R, and then a green A. So I'd be green and yellow and blue. Spencer would have the same, his S would be the same, but then because he has a P, SP instead of SA, it would look different. And so they see colors for letters and numbers, and one only sees numbers as colors and one sees letters as colors.
So were they confused when they saw the Google logo and with all the different? I mean, so that's kind of what they would see it as, right? I mean, that's bizarre.
That's such a good point, Spencer. You know what? I'm going to ask. That is a really, really great question.
I was going to ask you, does that happen when they're like reading a letter too, or is it only on larger?
No, like all the time.
Really?
So it must be hard for them to read, it must be, or beautiful. I don't know. That isn't how my brain works. Spencer, you have Echoes of the Dead coming out October 5th. A link. Oh, Melissa is saying this is so fascinating. Melissa, I totally agree. You have Echoes of the Dead coming out October 6th, y'all. And you have another book coming out October 12th. Tell us about that one as well.
Yeah. It's Last Ride of the Bumblebee Jacket. Not a crime novel. It's more literary fiction. And it's a lot of stuff from my own life kind of dumped in. And it involves tens of millions of dollars in lost art, this vintage convertible, Plymouth convertible, and then this group of people that kind of come together, one of them to buy the car from this old lady, and then the others have different parts that they play as well. And it's like, this elderly lady has all these secrets, and the car is one of them. And as they start to decipher what the car really is, it unlocks other things and other information. And then they call in an expert from the Seattle Art Museum, and it's all based in Bellingham, the whole story. So, and it's one of those that, for anybody with a soul, you'll be crying by the end, and it's a feel good book. So.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Spencer, one thing I wanted to ask you is this book, when the four guys are kidnapped and Steps and Jimmy are tracking them down, bad things happen to those four guys.
Yeah.
Very violent things. How did you come up with those things? The different torture techniques. Is that, I don't know if that's right, the right term. How'd you come up with some of this stuff? I didn't even know this stuff existed. I was like,
yeah, I'm sure if people looked at my my search history, they'd be concerned. So, yeah, without giving too much away, you know what that stuff leads to, the conclusion they finally draw. So I needed to come up with different elements that I could throw in with each one of them that would lead to that final conclusion. And so I just, I kind of thought about that whole process, what would be involved with, I'm trying to talk around it here without giving too much away.
You into a corner, Spencer. I'm sorry.
But, there's a method to the madness. And each one of those, I have to tell you, I think it is my darkest book. It's certainly the most violent crime scenes. So, from that aspect, and it was, parts of it were, pretty brutal to write too. But yeah, each one of the elements that happens in the story leads to something related to the discovery towards the end. So. Oh.
I was muted. I didn't want to. My dog was going to start barking. Melissa, I know you can relate because I see your profile picture as a dog. Thankfully, she's being good. Mine is. Okay. Melissa wants to know: is this a series? Mm-hmm. And which one in this book is the first? So this is the fourth book in the Step series. So give us the skinny on these.
So this is Collecting the Dead. This is when you first meet Steps and Jimmy, and you learn about his special ability. And this one takes place in Northern California, where some women have gone missing, and he's called in to do some tracking. And this is one of those cases where that vibrating shine that tells you whether they're alive or dead really comes into play. And I've had people contact me and tell me that they'd never cried reading a crime novel, but with this one they did. So and just because again, you're able to get into Step's head because it's first person, and it becomes very personal to him. So then there's Whispers of the Dead. That one takes place all over between El Paso and Tucson, mostly in El Paso, and it's a different kind of serial killer, and it's one that I would say that towards the end you start to empathize with him a little bit. Once things are revealed and you start to discover, the method to his madness. So, and then Shadows of the Dead. This one came out last August. This one here's closer to home. It takes place on the Olympic Peninsula, and then also there's a lot of activity between like Everett and Tacoma, and it's an interesting one because there's two bad guys in this one. One that you meet right at the beginning, and then the one that's more sinister and manipulative. You don't, discover who he is towards the end, but they're working together, but they've never met. And then you learn how that came about, and it's the book with the least actual bodies in the story, but I think the most victims, because you just don't. And I don't want to go into that because there's a really eerie cabin scene in the Olympic Mountains where they make a discovery and start to realize what might be going on. So yeah, that was number 3, and then Echoes is number 4.
So I have plunked the link to every single one of these 4 books in the comments so that you can grab number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4 coming out October 5th. And if you'd like to peruse the whole list and see, here's the link to the whole list as well. So again, all 3 backlists, because once you're gonna fall in love with Steps, you're gonna fall in love with Spencer. You're gonna want to read them all, or you might want to read them in order. Here they all are, y'all. Okay, just want to make sure. Kendra is saying Spencer Kope is a mix of Barry Eisler and Stephen King with his own style. Every book just gets better and better. Shadows of the Dead was better than the movie Silence of the Lambs. Kendra Cook, strong praise there. Well, thank you for joining us.
I think my daughter would disagree because Silence of the Lambs is her favorite movie. So,
well, Kendra sounds less biased than your daughter.
I'm going to believe Kendra. So.
Melissa saying thank you. They all sound terrific. Absolutely. Margaret Pernard, your fellow Washingtonite, tuning in from Portland, although I think she's on the road. She said, I'm so far behind on the new books, but happy to just be getting into Laura Bazelon's book, Finally Another Murder Street. Great for an Amtrak ride. Margaret, this is your fellow Washingtonite. If that's the word, your Washington State resident, Mr. Spencer Kope, joining us live tonight. So great to have you here as well, ma'am. So Spencer, I want to thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for giving us the inside scoop on Echoes of the Dead, coming out October 5th, everyone. George is saying, thank you, Sara and Spencer. I see a new series in my future. Yes, right. George Beach, absolutely. Margaret saying, yay for the Pacific Northwest Wonderland. Washingtonians. I'm sorry, I was saying Washingtonites. Washingtonians can hang. Yes, ma'am. And don't forget to join my Facebook group to continue the conversation, my Mystery and Thriller Babies Facebook group, where we nerd out about our favorite books. You enter giveaways. We have a lot of fun over there. I'm plopping the link in the comments, free and open to all. Y'all, it has been a wonderful night. Thank you to naval intelligence analyst turned crime analyst, detective, and crime fiction author Spencer Kope. Cynthia saying, I can't wait to read the latest books. Absolutely. Cynthia, grab your copy tonight. Thank y'all for spending Monday night with me. Hashtag Mystery Monday, because you know Mondays can be murder. I'll see you next Monday. Have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you.